All
Howdy.
right, all right. Welcome. How are you doing?
It's all right. No, actually, I'm having a good day with my mood. I was actually laughing for no reason today when I was driving around.
Well,
So
that's
I look
good.
like a maniac from people watching, I guess.
Well, we are going to be talking about no laughing matter,
Mm,
Russia and Ukraine.
yes. It is a little bit laughable, though, with how
Yeah,
ridiculous and convoluted it is and how contentious the fight is amongst opposition to the only true position, which is to be for Ukraine no
yeah,
matter what.
yeah, and that's a really interesting thing. I mean, when the Ukraine war first kind of broke out, I mean, we were very. I remember being holding my position off as anything that's official. All that I really knew is like I don't think that Russia should be going into Ukraine. I knew at minimum.
Yeah.
I knew that much, right? But I didn't know anything else. I didn't know the politics of it. I didn't know much about the history of it. I didn't know anything that was necessarily leading, like what was the cause of this. I had no idea what the reason or rationale. As far as I could tell, I was like,
As far as you can tell, Russia is just an asshole.
yeah, and like
Right.
Russia's just going in for no reason. And I was like, if that's the case, then I'm opposed to Russia invading Ukraine. But I also have the position, or even then kind of had the position of like, okay, well, what is our role in that? And why do we even have a role in this? This doesn't we at that time, I think we had left NATO.
Yeah.
We weren't even part of NATO anymore because we were dumping money into it. And
So the role that we have is trying to stop the old Soviet Union from getting the band back together in some ways. Like we have this idea of trying to, because back in the day when it all separated out, it was to keep communism at bay. It was like trying to rid the world of
right,
communism, and we've just kind of been maintaining that where we don't want to have Russia have like that warm water port and access to be able to just exert their power. Um, because they almost say that they're in a position where they have to ask more permission to get through to do certain things, and the more you give them full access to not have to give any f's, the more powerful they are, even if they are not really a world power anymore.
right. But I feel like, I mean, we kind of just off the gate were just casting them as a villainous country. I
I know
mean,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
prior I mean, as far as I could tell, like, yeah, there's a lot of things that he does internally within his country that is not an okay thing for Putin to be doing. I mean, there's deaths that are surrounding him, that are incredibly
All these
questionable.
oligarchs that oppose him are suddenly falling off of balconies.
Right, or getting poisoned or something like
Right.
that. And so, there were angles and aspects of it that I was like, okay, sure, but I also have to look at things from like the perspective of like, okay, well, if we're going to go into Ukraine or and fight against or contribute to the fight um against Russia, well, look at all these other travesties and things that are happening around the world. But I also look at what our actions do when we do help to contribute in all of these things. I mean, I remember having a conversation a little while ago about Yemen, and I was like, dude, Yemen is just a completely destroyed, and it literally has no hope of gaining of improving in
Yeah.
any fashion as long as we are dumping weapons into that country and fueling this proxy war. And so it's kind of like at some point, it's kind of like, look, I feel like for the health of the actual country,
Yep.
we kind of just have to let them be and let them resolve their own issue. We may say, hey, you know what, we want these people to win, but if they're not
Well,
going to win,
in
then they're
most
not going to
cases,
win, and it's
yeah.
just going to be a perpetual state of death and destruction.
In most cases, they call American like uh, like the world police in a bad way, where imperialism still lives within the US. And so they criticize this type of thing, but now it's like the answer. It's like the only way. It's like, oh my gosh, they're so brave. They're so brave. There's that news story today where they show I think you have it. It's they show Zelensky is being presented a commencement as a commencement speaker,
Yeah, it
and
says
it like
Ukraine Zelensky surprises John Hopkins grads at their commencement speaker.
so it's a moral, it's a propaganda for a moral good that is the cause of Ukraine. Now, the people of Russia are good people too. The problem is the dictatorship, and you don't manage. I don't know. It's so much more complicated. It's
You
so much
know,
more complicated than to just say that, oh, well, Russia shouldn't have went in, so therefore we have the right to stop him. It's like, yes, I prefer it too, but there's also billions of dollars that are being spent that are not being spent somewhere else. Like there's
yeah,
a cost, there's an opportunity cost to the dollars that we spend and push around the world. If there isn't a cost, then there's a cost to inflation, meaning we're printing money to do it. Then we're like, oh my gosh, there's inflation. It's just a bad cycle of the economy. No, it's a direct result of us just doing whatever we want and then printing more.
yeah, and our pay increases aren't going up at the rate of inflation, and so I mean, we actually end up suffering, and it was interesting because when Biden went into all of this, his whole thing was going to be, we're going to be doing all of this stuff, and we're gonna suffer a little bit. We're gonna have higher prices at the gas pump. You know, eggs are gonna cost a little bit more. Milk's gonna cost a little bit more. Your general food and everything's gonna kind of go up. But that's the sacrifice that we need to be willing to make for the sake of freedom, of maintaining a free country
Right.
in another part of the
In
world.
that sense, it was very, very convenient for a period of time. I think that people have forgot about the connection. It was very, very convenient for a period of time to be able to blame Russia for the growing inflation at a certain for like a 3 month period of time. They got away with it a little bit.
That's all
Um,
you need, though. All you need
Yeah,
is
they
people to
need a
be putting their
scapegoat so you
the
can do whatever you
flag.
want, and then when it cycles back, you just take credit and you say, "Oh, it's because of those outlying events caused this." But when you get back to the real policies that we've had, and so by the end of next year, by the middle of next year, when the economy starts coming back, Biden's gonna be like, "Yep, yep, we did it. We got through it. All these hard things, and our policies are working." It's
His whole thing was like, we're going to, um he even would have the little smile, the smirk, like, we're gonna go after we're gonna drain. What we're gonna do is we're gonna drain um Russia's economy. We're gonna make it hard for them to maintain this. And I'm just sitting there like, this isn't going to be something that's going to be difficult for them to maintain
so
because
they're
they've
trying Star
they've got
Wars too.
China
So they're
right
trying Star
there.
Wars too, because that's what we did. That's what we did to win the Cold War in the first place. Is we announced like our Star Wars program, which was basically satellites and a interception system in space that's going to counteract all this nuke stuff that they have been having with the arms race. And then they go, okay, we just can't, we're done. And so what they're trying to do is have a Star Wars 2 here, where they're saying they want to starve them out. They want to just use the American economy to defeat them.
And it's not
Um,
going to work.
it worked the first time, but this time
Not
you
working
can't.
here.
Yeah.
I don't see how it even would. It's they're we've entered into a whole new era. Things operate very differently. They are much more savvy in how they can develop and how they have managed to develop.
And we have the
And
internet, and
yeah,
they have
and
the internet.
and it's like, we thought that we were just going to be, or I don't even know if they actually thought that this was going to happen. I feel like this whole thing is just a big scheme to reinflate the pockets of the military industrial complex, um, on the backs of the people. And because as long as we have, it's so stupid, as long as we have these perpetual wars, then our military gets to just keep on funneling money into their
Yeah.
pockets.
I
And
could be more
we
specific.
and it all gets, it all sucks for us because we're the ones who are paying for it all.
So I'm not big on conspiracy in general, like the idea that there's this. I do believe there are powerful people at play that want, yes, like Halliburton type places, places where that like they completely benefit from this. There are people that want it to happen. I just don't think like I don't think the plan is at the DNC or at the White House levels. Like let's do this war to keep the money rolling for our friends and family. I don't think that's it, but you could say there's a Ukraine connection already with the whole blackmail thing or all the stuff with the with the Hunter Biden taking money and all the corruption and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, you can say there's such an incestuous relationship with Ukraine from the corruption and things like that before, and then now we're like, well, we owe you, and you have so many secrets against us, maybe, or something like that's a conspiracy. That I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm just throwing that out there. Is that like there's some sort of connection? We have been talking about Ukraine for more than just this prior to this.
I think there's far more of logical reasons and rationale that there is. I mean, do you believe in the establishment? Do you think
I
that the
believe there are
establishment is
people
a
that
thing?
occupy power and want to maintain a status quo.
How do they
Like,
get that power?
yeah, sure. You can say it's an incestuous relationship
Outside
between
influence, right?
corporations.
There's
Yeah,
outside influence who are the hidden shadows of what I who I would establish as the leaders of the establishment, who are dumping money into these people in order to create these policies that are in their favor, that push the agenda that they want. And so long as they do that, the people who are who make it to power are able to remain in power. And if you don't follow those rules, if you don't follow and do the things that they want you to do, then boom, they kick you right out.
yeah. There is the good
You
old
get
boys
the boot.
club, and there is a deep state in the good old boys club.
Okay, so then I guess you are part of you are into the conspiracies of it. But it all makes
Yes.
sense though. It all makes sense. And it's like when you have these establishment forces, and what they want is to they want to have they want to destabilize things, and they want to basically, the way I would imagine it, that it would go, if I was in charge, if I was like, hey, I'm going to be I want to be more in control of the world and how it functions and how it operates. I would want to um, destabilize countries in order to, while simultaneously raking in money that can go into my pockets or the pockets of people that share the same interest as me, and then to do it off of the backs of the people who are paying for it, so I don't even have to pay for it. If I'm the big head honcho, all I got to do is I got to pay these individual people. That's fine. I can pay these individual people, these politicians. I can pay them to do whatever to insert and push forward the policies, and I can even help to guide them in how to do those things, and how, and like what the narrative is, and I can drive that whole ship, and then and then create these situations like proxy wars, where we get to take all of our older weapons, dump it over into these other countries, and then that means that triggers that now we have to resupply ours. So then me and my friends,
Yeah.
we all get to profit off of all of this new stuff. And who's paying for all of this new stuff? It's the people. And I would also want the people to be poorer and poorer and poorer. And so when you think about it just in that simple, in that, and it can go way deeper too, but when you just think about it at that simple level, it's like, well, I'm getting exactly what I want. I got my proxy war. I got my weapons that are being sent over there, and I'm doing it off of the backs of the
So,
people.
so if I think about someone like a Schumer, which I don't think is a particularly good person, I still don't imagine that he actually wants people to be poorer and poorer and poorer. So I think that he
Well, he's
wants.
not doing much to prevent people from being poorer and poorer and poorer.
Yeah, I think that he is. I think that he is not a good person, and he will lie in order to present the truth. So, in order to place the truth that people must see, he will say things that are not true. Um, it's kind
You're
of
gonna have to give me an example
okay.
or
Okay,
something.
so I'll go back to Harry Reid because that's the example coming where he purposely says the idea about Mitt Romney, say like, well, I don't know that Mitt Romney pays his taxes because he doesn't know it. It's like I haven't seen proof that he pays his taxes, and he just says stuff and puts an idea out there that like
Yeah,
it's like
that's
so now he's
narrative
supposed to prove
control.
himself innocent or whatever else, and it's like, but like he just
Yeah,
the idea is he knew very well that Mitt Romney did pay his taxes, there was no issues, but he was doing that on purpose to win because all that mattered was winning this thing, and then because of the timing of it during the election type thing, it it affected the numbers a little bit. And Harry's like, hey, whatever. He said off the camera some other time. He said, what, you know, I've
yeah,
never seen
and
him do
who
taxes,
knows?
but
Who knows
this
that
is
where he
politics.
even
This
got
is
the
politics,
idea? I mean, maybe he came up with it on his own, but even so, like if Harry Reid's interest is to prevent Mitt Romney from getting it, from taking the position because he wants somebody else to take
Right.
that
And so he'll
position,
say
then
anything.
he'll say anything. Yeah, but
Yes.
but that's the thing is like when if you're part of the establishment, all that matters is the end goal, and the end goal is getting X person into office so that they can
Yes.
enact
I
the
believe in all that,
policy.
but I don't believe it to the point of where what they actually want is everyone to be poor. Like people would say if you could evolve, if you could
Well, it's
evolve
not
further,
they
it's
don't
the
want
thing
they
that they
don't want
want
a
an
snap of a
underclass so they can always have someone to have to help. You can say that. You can make it sound even better by saying that like, oh, they always want an underclass so that they always have someone that they can preach to, someone to say, hey, you need us to help you. So you can say yes, they do want that, but I don't think that like even Schumer. I picked Schumer because I really don't like him. I even don't think that he actually wants people to have no money down or an underclass like that. I think that he just thinks that his ideas work and they don't. He thinks that ideas work, so he will be willing to lie about other things, to implement the ideas that he thinks are going to work, but they just haven't been tried in the right way, or because there's always some sort of Republican foot blocking the full pure path. And so I think there are a lot of true believers that are bad people because of their methods and methodologies.
I think
I don't think they
AOC
actually
is one
believe
of
that they're
those
doing
types
ha
of
ha
people.
ha. I don't think they're like ha 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 ha. We're gonna keep the world subject to us. I don't think that's a majority
Well,
of people.
those aren't the people. I'm not talking about Schumer being the guy that's making the full profit. He's like the bishop in the chess game, right? He plays a role, and he plays a role that is powerful enough, but it's in service of the player, right? And the player is the one that's really saying, okay, this is the kind of thing. Okay, you can also almost look at it like maybe there's not always a bad actor, but what they can do is they can find people. I mentioned this in the thing before, is that you can find people who are interested and willing to play that game. They want to get in, they want to be a tool of the lobbyists because they know that that's going to enable them to have a reputation. It's going to enable them to have power. It's going to enable them to have money. It's going to give them everything that they really want. So like Joe Biden, and I'm waiting for the clip to eventually come out at some point, which I'm skeptical that people will ever find it, but in which he basically said out of college he went to try to become a senator,
Yeah.
and they told him
So
no, you
Glenn
can't
Beck
do
has
that.
that clip. Glenn Beck
Who?
has that. Glenn Beck has that clip.
I want to see that clip then.
So
Send me that clip if you can find it, because I would love to see it.
I'm not going to be searching through years of history because I've seen that
Right, it's
clip.
a hard one to find. Like,
Right.
okay, do you know?
So I
Do you
know
can
for
you
sure that
recall what it
I've
was
seen that
titled?
clip, and the only one that would have had it would be Glenn Beck because he did extensive stuff on Joe Biden, especially about
Okay.
Ukraine
Well,
stuff.
for the viewers who may not have listened to it before, basically what Joe Biden had said was, when he got out of college, he went to go talk to the people in charge, like the DNC, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to become senator." And they said, "Do you have any connections? Do you have any connections inside?" And they said, "No." He said no, and they said, "Okay, well, you need to go get some, go talk to these lobbyists, and then come back when you've built those
Relationships.
connections up." And then 2 years later, he comes back and he's like, "Look, these are the people that are on my side." And they said, "All right, you're in," and they were all just lobbyists. So it's like when you have lobbyists who are the pawns, basically, they're the pawns in the chess game, and but they're super valued. There's so many of them. They have lots of influence over everything that the people behind them are able to do, and so
So
it's this
so
whole
the solution
system
is just to get rid of the deep state, which is what we're in general, right? They basically that what it comes around to because
that I would like to get rid of the deep state.
yeah,
Sure, yeah,
I mean
because I don't think that it's like when you
there's
look at
kind
the
of a
decisions that
reoccurring
are being
theme with
made.
there's kind of a reoccurring theme with all the different issues that we have in the world, and it tends to be that like that like the establishment class of people that are in there, and
They
it
make the same decisions.
yes,
It doesn't matter whether you're Bush, Clinton, Bush's son, Obama, Biden, Hillary, like all like all of these people who they're all like every one of them start a new war. They all start wars or they enter us into proxy wars and they create conflict within the
yeah,
world. And simultaneously, when they do that, they're also
yeah,
draining the economy and they're boosting up inflation within our own country. So
yeah.
they are not doing things that are actually in the benefit of the people. And
So
those are establishment policies. That's the effect of the establishment. And that's how you can identify in one aspect who the establishment is,
I
because
want
they start to enact these things.
I want to officially state my Ukraine path, like you said yours earlier on, is
Sure.
that initially, yes, I did believe I did see it's like, huh, this sucks. Russia bad, or not Russia bad, but Putin bad.
Yeah.
And I expected it to de-escalate within a couple weeks. And so I was kind of almost on board with like an actual surge type situation or something like we're going to do this and they realize okay, and then they
Maybe
talk
we
and
shouldn't because
they
the
agreed to do
U.S.
something
is
with
involved.
Crimea or something like that. So like I was okay with a certain level of showing that hey, you're not going to just run over these guys, you're not just going to take it because you're a bigger asshole, like so like I was
A
on that
fight's going to be
level.
put up.
Yeah,
Sure.
I was with it at that level, but then it just got nuanced into money and money and money. It's like what's going? Why we? So they said they wouldn't do this, and then they do this. They wouldn't do this, and then they do this, and it's to the point where we're basically giving them everything, even shorting our own supply. So our whole strategy for United States has always been able to have enough military to be able to run a two-front war at all times, and we don't have that when we're giving all the supplies to this. We can't. I mean, I don't know. I just don't.
Yeah.
In general, it doesn't make any sense on a lot of different levels. And I'm just like, there's a consequence with you can't just spend money. It's like okay, even if the Russia is even if it's all Russia bad and Ukraine is the perfect someone else, I just don't think we should be putting all of our investments into it. We should just somehow exit. I don't know how we exit. I don't know what the best way is to exit, but
You
I don't
actually sit
support giving
down
everyone
and
money.
just talk about it and you say, look, we're going to stop giving Ukraine money. We're going to stop sending Ukraine weapons. And Russia, you guys got to stop doing this. Like, let's just end this. However it happens, but I mean that maybe that's not the right answer. Maybe there's other answers, but you have to actually open up a dialogue. You have to have a discussion about these things. Because if you're not going to have a discussion, then literally all it's going to do is just just destroy the entire country and kill all of the people perpetually.
Yep.
It's on both sides, and it's such a bad thing. Now, something else is the what I found was really interesting. I remember there's a few things. There was one that I found that was really interesting was I remember, and I don't remember the event that it was, but it was like the day that everybody forgot about Ukraine. Like everybody just stopped caring about Ukraine. It was like every day people would have their Ukraine flags, and people would be talking about Ukraine all the
But then there was
time.
some sort of a pride event or something, and then they don't talk about Ukraine anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Not a pride event. It was probably like a school shooting or something like that.
Oh, okay.
There was some sort of big event where maybe it was the Waukesha, where it was like the Christmas thing. I don't even know if that was it though. I feel like that was kind of almost more of a blip. But there was some kind of event that took place, and everybody was like, whoa, and it pivots over into the guns. And so it seems as though society is really only able to focus on one big thing at a time, because it was like all everybody cared about was COVID. It was COVID. No, nobody talked about anything else. I mean, maybe there would be like a day or two when a school shooting would happen, like surrounding COVID or
and
any of these
before that,
crime things.
Trump. But
right, it was
that,
Russia. Well, it was Russia Gate, and then it was Ukraine Gate, and then it was COVID, and they just ran with COVID for the entire time until Ukraine hit. And then when Ukraine hit, they were like, "All right, we're done talking about COVID. We're ramping." They just start ramping it down. People don't talk about COVID anymore because it's largely a non-issue. COVID's not an issue anymore. It's
not an issue. Just some people still parade around in their cloth masks, like under their nose.
When I see people driving in a car with a mask on, I'm just like, this is the stupidest thing.
So the best argument I can give for them is if they have like an N95 and they went through the effort of actually sealing it up and getting on there, how they're supposed to stick and get a nice close cut, and they're going to work and they got it all situated, you're not supposed to take it off all day. Okay, you're doing, at least you're doing the most effective possible way of doing it. That's fine. But I have these people in their cloth with there's regular homemade masks and things, and they're like on their face-ish, but underneath their nose, and like it's like either you're doing it or you're not, because that's nothing. All that is ignorance. All that is just showing how ignorant you are.
I'm just glad that it eventually pivoted over to effectively mean I'm not sick, you're sick because you're wearing the mask. Mm-hmm. I think that's more or less where we're at.
I am very glad.
I was waiting for that kind of a situation to happen.
I have passive aggressively used that before. Like, oh, I hope you feel better soon as I leave. But like I say, I do it really nice. I hope you feel better, because they're wearing a mask and it's ridiculous that they're wearing it.
Yeah.
And so like I do that but I do it in seriously nice so they can't tell. Like I said, I'm a delivery driver, and I say, oh, I hope you feel better. I say that I want to fix them in a sense, throw that in their mind of, oh, he thinks I'm sick. So
yeah,
it is on purpose.
It's like, oh, he's avoiding me.
But I'm not being mean. It's more like it's like the nicest way to do it, honestly. And I will continue to do it.
Yeah.
when it's appropriate.
But one of the things about the kind of getting back to Ukraine a little bit is when I eventually learned the actual reason and rationale behind Russia going in. Do you know what that is?
It is the warm water port and oil, and having to do with like there's Russian speaking people there, and it's restoring the old borders of Russia before they break up. That's always there, but is there a specific reason that?
Yeah, there's more of a reason. Is basically NATO, Biden and NATO started pushing.
Yes,
and it started getting close
because they want them to join NATO, and Russia's like, no, don't do that, because they were operating a purposely neutral environment before, but
Yeah.
they're being convinced to join. It's like, no, you're not going to do that because Russia
So they
doesn't want
were they
NATO
were
on their borders. That's it. I
the
forgot.
deal in effect was, okay, Ukraine can be Ukraine, that's fine, we don't care, but we need to have a good relationship with Ukraine. And NATO was like, well, we're going to make sure that you don't, like, okay, that's fine, but we're going to make sure that you don't um, grow your power again and you start taking over other countries again. So we're going to set up this NATO in order to make sure that you don't do anything. And so
Yeah.
right there is an initial threat. That's the threat that says, hey, don't do anything. You do what I
forgotten
say.
about that. I did know
Yeah.
that. I had forgotten.
Yeah. And so then they say, so then after during all of the Trump era and the Trump Russia and all this stuff, they were like, okay, oh, Russia's the bad guy because they're messing around with our elections, which turns out isn't true at all.
No.
So we completely manufactured that, and so they go and we say, like, now it's like, okay, now we have the people who are upset at Russia, and so then it's like, okay, now all we have to do is start talking about and beefing up Ukraine and kind of lightly enticing Ukraine to come join us because there's growing tension that they're manufacturing. There's growing tension between Russia and Ukraine, or that Russia is going to attack Ukraine. And then they ended up just making their wish come true because they were like, okay, well, if Russia's going to attack Ukraine, then we need to ally up with Ukraine, which means that Ukraine has to pick a side, which means they're no longer neutral, which means that Russia is actually their enemy. And so Russia was like, you are literally doing exactly the opposite of what our deal was. Yeah. So F you guys, like, we're taking Ukraine. And so it's like when people think like he went in for no reason, it's not that he went in for no reason. There's an analogy that you can make of, like, say China was like, hey, you know what, Mexico, we want to help you guys out. We want to provide you guys with weapons. And we know you guys, there's some issues that you guys that you and America have with the border, and things can seem like they're getting a little messy. And then they said, okay, you know what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a base for you guys, because if your guys' tensions are starting to get not so good, then we want to make sure that you guys can maintain yourselves. So we're gonna set up missile bases, and we're gonna arm you guys and make sure. And we would be sitting here like, hold on a second, China is over here allying up and giving weapons
and
to
building a base right on our border,
our neighboring southern neighboring country, and they're doing it in a threatening manner, as if they are intending on doing something to us. Screw that.
Yeah.
Like, no,
so it's a Cuban
we're
missile
not going to tolerate that.
It's a Cuban Missile Crisis situation, basically, except for, so it's not as bad, obviously, but the Cuban Missile Crisis, the reason why we didn't want Russia giving weapons to Cuba, because they're so close to us, because they put us in striking distance. So it's a similar type of concept over there, where Ukraine is part of the buffer, including all the Slavic countries that exited during World War II or 50s era, I guess. They were like the buffer, the non-NATO buffer in between the rest of the world. And so that was kind of like, okay, it was kind of agreement where they were just like, okay, so as long as they don't join NATO, then they can be whatever, even if they were kind of like forcibly under Russia's thumb in some ways because of financial reasons. And Ukraine has always been kind of controlled by Russia, but not 100%. It's just been corrupted, and they have resources.
Yeah, but I don't think that it was even necessarily Russia that's corrupting, because Ukraine has just, honestly, like, Ukraine has been known for many years now
Yeah.
to be the most corrupt country on the planet, which
Yes.
I think is a very interesting detail that the media tends to not ever address or look at. I mean, when we sit there and talk about freedom, oh, they're their last, that's a freedom, a country that needs to remain free over in that part of the world, and it's like free, they are corrupt as hell. That is not a, like, when you have a government system that is actively taking massive advantage of their own people, and they're setting up businesses in ways that are totally screwed up, creating oligarchs, right? Like, this is not, I mean, when you think about it in that kind of a term, it's like, this is not
Yep.
a free country to protect in a large sense. This is, I would like for them. I mean, there's the idea and there's the concept of, hey, you know what? I would like Ukraine to remain Ukraine, but I would also want Ukraine to have the ability to fix itself. It currently doesn't seem, at least back then, currently doesn't seem as though they're even remotely interested in fixing their corruption. They seem to largely be doing things that are bypassing the fixing of all of this corruption. So for us to have this kind of concept and idea that we can just throw out there as though Ukraine is some victim to us again, and Russia is the perpetrator, and so now, and there's no fault of their own, there's no fault of our own, there's no fault of NATO, and that it's like somehow just unjustified for Russia to feel the way that they do, and then to take actions based off of that, I think is grossly unfair to Russia. Now, I would agree that Russia should not be invading, but I also completely understand, because that's not like, if you want a war, if what you want is a war, or you want to create a war, or you want to fund a proxy war, the roadmap is to do exactly what we did, and to do exactly what NATO was doing. And it just kind of seems like, okay, when we go back to the establishment and the powers that be that live in the shadows, that are pulling the strings, it's like, this is exactly what you would want. This is exactly what you would want. And then when you see all of these other countries
if
are
you want it to
engaging
happen,
into it.
if you want it to happen, what you want is a nuanced situation that develops slowly, one step at a time, almost like you're trying to stop it, but you're kind of pushing it. You're kind of
Yeah.
making it happen by your actions, but
Yeah.
but it looks like you're responding to each step.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And is that not what happened?
Yeah, that's what happened, but
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know that. Yeah, I don't know.
You have a hard time making the decision that you don't want to come down hard and say, this is my position
No,
on it.
I am
You can
happy to
acknowledge
have a
all of the
hard position.
details and everything around it.
I'm happy to have a hard position. I just always push back against grand grand narratives, theories of everything. Like, people have theories of everything where they pull everything together in a giant conspiracy, and I'm like, there are so many things at play other than that. And it's not just
Tell me some. Like, what's an alternate explanation that makes any sort of other valid sense?
incompetence. Just them being incompetent.
Just straight up incompetence.
Yep. So
So
that's usually the best explanation, is like just thinking that, oh, I'm just gonna kind of like Carrie had this problem
over
too.
and over. Okay, hold on a
So
second.
Carrie would, like, I'm thinking about Carrie specifically, and he's like negotiating all these different type of people. He was gonna, well, all I'm gonna do is just go negotiate. It's like the power of my voice and my very presence and my amazingness is going to convince them. They have this idea, these high-minded ideas that happen in the ivory tower of this stuff, and like, we just got to do it. we just got to do whatever else. And like, it's just like, it's like, what? And like, it's deaf. It's like they're deaf to what is actually needed. And they keep on doing these things, putting these square pegs in there's round holes. And it's just like, it just never works. And so it's just failure. And then they're trying to fix it. And then they cover it up by embracing this is what we actually want in the first place.
At what point does it stop being? At what point can the excuse fail as incompetence? Because what we have seen over and over and over again, war after war after war, the exact same results. And we can predict, I can predict, look, I can count myself as a big old dummy. I'm just a little citizen guy who lives in a state, and I don't have any super powerful job. And this isn't even my within my purview of expertise, right? But even I can see that the decisions that Joe Biden has made and Obama has made and Bush has made and Clinton have made, like I can foresee what the end results are going to be. And then they come
I think
true.
there's so much wheeling and dealing going on for just trying to get support for people to back their agendas and different things, such that there's so much that they can't tell where the scales are balanced at, and it's just all one incestuous pile of everybody.
So you can go favors. So you can have all of these presidents, right, and all of these politicians falling for the same exact thing. Over and over again.
It's not falling for it. What I'm saying is it's a
but
pile,
they're doing it.
It's a pile of people all bartering for power and control and like, but you're doing trades to get favors. It's just a pile of everybody doing that, and it just moves in the direction of money or power. It's not. I don't feel like it's like there's anyone at the top of the pyramid is actively directing anything in a direction to like, let's do this. Like if we go to Ukraine,
an individual
let's
person.
backwards figure this out. Like we're gonna go to Ukraine and do this because it's gonna solve all these issues down along the way, and we're gonna have I don't think anything's being solved that way. I think that everyone's chasing their, like, this person needs to vote for this, and this person needs to go that, and this corporation needs to say yes. This country needs to allow us to build this bridge or this military base, and I think all this stuff is trading. It just constantly
wheeling and dealing.
That's why I think it's a bunch of madhouse of everyone just trying to get what they want all the time, and I don't think it's a massive conspiracy.
And they're not even thinking about. And so they've got this whole book. They've got an entire cabinet full of people who have been doing this same thing, who have been in this establishment for many, many, many years.
Yes.
And they have seen presidents come and go, and they've seen the decisions that they've made and the mistakes that result from it. And then when the new guy comes in, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, you want to do the thing? Well, that's just like that other thing. And this is how it resulted.
Ultimately,
and that's how it's going to result in this. Like, they don't even do that.
Ultimately, I don't think it matters.
This incompetence line, I think, is
I don't think that
is on quicksand. It's the foundation is so weak.
I don't think it matters which it is. I just don't see any boogeyman that is directing it anywhere. I think it's just individual people grabbing for power. That doesn't even matter, though.
Well, you wouldn't know
no matter what the reason is. The solution is getting rid of all the deep state people. So, like, it doesn't really matter. What matters is getting rid of all
the deep state people is formed by the influences of the few that are not known.
Yes.
Because when you look at businesses and corporations and how money and how money is able to be donated and granted and all these things, they're all these little shell companies, and they're able to donate from this, and they have their own reputation. This business has their own reputation, but who's it owned by? Right. And it goes through all these, and it's just kind of shelled out so much that you don't even know who the end top owner person is.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's so much garbage like that that it's just motivated towards corruption because they want more. Everyone wants to get the best deal they can, or
Well,
they don't
those are the
want to
pawns. Those are the pieces. But you've still
I
got
just don't see
the.
anyone. I mean, who's the benefit from going Ukraine? I guess you say Halliburton type companies. They're getting benefits. So
It's all kinds of, it's tons of stuff, tons of people.
it just
No,
seems
not tons of people, but
the
there's
more
there's a
people you get, the
select.
more it seems unlikely.
It's like it's an industry. You can think of it almost like an industry. If you can create a problem that requires a solution, then you create an industry to address that problem, and then you perpetuate that problem, which means you get to continuously supply the solution.
I wish
And
I could
though, and
have.
everybody in that industry profits.
I wish I could have Ben Shapiro try to make my point for me, even if he disagrees, because I'd like to hear I'm actually thinking. Because I don't think I'm adequately explaining what.
It sounds to me like you're kind of bouncing around a little bit.
So what I'm saying is, it's just all based on the premise of I don't believe that there is, like for instance, you have like the Council of Foreign Relations or the Bohemian Grove. Like I don't. I believe there are a bunch of people
The
that believe
Illuminati.
in something and they want liberal ideas, or they want energy, clean energy or whatever it is. But I don't think that it's actually some sort of directed thing like towards Ukraine or towards whatever
It
else.
doesn't have to be a directed thing. That's something that I think I should probably maybe make a little more clear. Is if you can like, people are going to operate in their own self-interest. So if you can create a situation that enables them to act in their own
Yes.
self-interest, then you can get them to do it at what it is that you want them to do.
Yes,
So
that's what I say is happening.
say there's somebody who comes and they're like, "Hey, I want to become a senator," and it's like, well, we need to figure, like, the back end reason is, or not, the back end question is, well, what is your agenda? What is it that you want to do? If you want to come in and you want to just be like, I want to do right by the people and I want to stick for this and I want to say F off to the establishment, right? They're going to be like, awesome, that's great. Go talk to this person, and that person's going to redirect them and redirect them and redirect them, and they're not going to go anywhere because they know they're shift them down to the people who are effectively so incompetent that they're not able to do
But if
anything.
someone
And then
says
the
what
real
I really
people
want to
in
do
power,
is I want to accomplish this specific thing, it doesn't even matter which party it's for or which agenda is for.
I want
But
this thing.
if it's narrowly focused, they'd be like,
Yeah.
you know what? I think we can work with you on that.
Yeah.
And then but then they own the person.
Yeah.
Right.
In effect. And so then you end up with, here's somebody, like, you can almost look at it like Fox News. Like, Fox News has anchors who are free to speak their mind. They can say whatever they want, right? But the people that they're bringing on are of the same mindset. They don't even think. I mean, you can listen to Tucker early on. He's like, it didn't even occur to me that Iraq would be that this was a bad thing. He's like, it didn't even occur to me. So those are the people that you find, because you have somebody who is in favor of whatever this thing is, and they are prone to accepting these kinds of things.
So,
and then they get to push all
my
of that
opposition
forward.
to this has nothing to do with whether it's correct or not. Like, you may be absolutely correct, but it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I just can't believe that. It's one of those things where I'm like, it's just so hard to believe that.
I'm not trying to convince you.
There's a big boogeyman out there.
Here, I'm not trying to convince you.
No, that's fine.
But hold on.
You are on board. Like 90% of people all agree with you.
Okay,
I get it.
Well, here,
it didn't pass a sniff test for some reason. I can't.
Right.
It might be irrational for me to disagree. I just, for some reason, feel like
you can disagree, and I don't have a problem with it, because I think that these kinds of conversations are important, because what it does, for me at least, is it allows me an opportunity to, I can hear what you have to say, and I can shut it down. I can say
So
this is
I could
why
make
it doesn't
your
make any
argument.
sense.
I can make your
I'm sure
argument
you can, but I'm
all
not
day
trying
the
to
week
convince you.
to somebody else if I
I'm
wanted
not
to
trying to
talk to them.
convince you. I'm
But I'm
not trying
saying,
to convince
and
you.
I
Yeah.
completely understand your argument. I know it just
Right.
feels weird, but it also really felt weird that nobody stood up during COVID to the overbearing closing of businesses for too long and like arresting people for walking in
Why
the
would
park.
they?
That also, I'm like, what?
Why
What?
would
Why isn't
they?
anyone rebelling?
This
So,
is
so
exactly
in the
what you
exact
would
same
want.
way, that's the same type of reaction I'm having to what you're saying. Is what I'm saying is that like, no, this can't be. No, no, that's not the world we live in. So like, that's the type of reaction it is. It's not a matter of if you're not correct. It might be maybe it's very correct,
Sure.
but I
I want
just
to
for
make the
some reason my
case.
body is still rejecting it.
Let me say it. Let me say it a little nicer. I want to make the case and to show that there is more rationality behind what it is that I'm saying than the interpretation that you have, which is more or less it's incompetence, right? To me, incompetence
Incompetence and
isn't,
greed, and
you're
incompetence
free
and
to have
greed,
it.
and they just kind of meander about and
Sure,
try to, and
sure,
then oops, it got us into war. And they're
sure.
like, well,
Yeah,
how do we make lemons out of lemonade? And
to
then they're
me,
like, okay,
that's not
I guess
satisfactory.
we need to get our hands in the defense contracts now. Or so like it's so I think it
Right.
just kind of meanders in towards the bad because of the greed.
The incompetence line to me is not a satisfactory line of reason because it's way too simple and it's purely and it in function it dismisses everything. And I think that there's too much
It's
that's out
true.
there. There's too much out there that shows, hey, there's something else happening here. In my opinion, there's something else happening on here because it's way too unbelievable to me. I can't sit there and be like, wait, for real? What? We've really gone this far purely through incompetence. We go through from one president to the next to the next to the next of pure incompetence that, and it seems as though they
So
all keep on doing the exact same
so
things.
I will make your point also on another kind of connected issue. It's interesting how stories that are incorrectly proposed are always erring on one side. Like they're always erring in one direction. So if they have
Yeah,
a story that happened where somebody got some right wing activist or a white right wing whatever else shot up this school, whatever else, they just come out with
boom,
that, and it's
the news is just
like, oh, well, we just didn't know the information. It actually isn't that, but you know, like
Jussie
10 days later,
Smollett
they
type
find
stuff,
out
right?
it's a Muslim guy that goes to whatever that they find out something. So, but all of the stories are 100% wrong in one direction. So, as an argument for you,
Yeah,
the things that I'm seeing as incompetence can easily just be like
an
can be
agenda.
like even you could even be optimistic saying what they think should be true and then it not being true and then them covering up. But like
So here's something else that because you made an argument in my favor, I will aim to make an argument in yours.
you have to dig in the ground somewhere and find one, right?
I'm always trying to I always try to play, you know, I have my positions and I will fight for them, but I will also fight against my own. Um, I think that there are also people, and I do actually believe this to a degree. Um, I have talked about this in the past where um, it's it's this concept of how you intake information and then how you process it and then how you feed the creatures that are living inside of these boxes, and each box functions as an interest or a skill or something you think about, or you know, some or a hobby or whatever it is. And so if you're taking in information and it keeps on funneling into this one box and it creates a monster, and then the other creatures end up dying because they get starved of the things that they want. So
Yeah.
then you can no longer relate to those things. So then what ends up happening is that you're taking in these stories and you're coming to these conclusions over here. This is the and that those conclusions end up creating a worldview. And so
Yeah.
then the next time a story comes in and
And
it
it
gets
doesn't fit
fed
into
down
that, they
there,
die.
they don't
Yeah.
have to tell you They don't have to tell you anymore what it is to think because they've trained you on how to think about these things. So you will come to the same conclusion on this event. You will start to make assumptions about this event, and that's what will happen, and you'll take that pathway. So I think that there
Racism or
are
white
people.
supremacy. Racism,
Yeah,
white supremacy, whatever it is.
yeah. Oh, there's a school shooting. I mean, you see these shootings or whatever, and it's like, oh, he's a Nazi, or you see Jesse Smollett is a perfect example.
Yep.
Right. You have the story comes in, and it's like, oh, this is what it is. I'm just gonna buy into this. I'm on board with this, right? And people are gonna come to their own conclusion, and they're not even gonna look at how odd and crazy and suspicious this entire story is. I mean, if you were to just like say what happened, it would be like, no way. Like that doesn't even sound okay. You're out at like 2 a.m. and
with the Subway sandwich and
getting a Subway
and you
sandwich, and
kept the noose around your neck for the cop to see, and the cop says, "Why do you saw that on?"
so I didn't want to mess with it, and I just kind of wanted to show you what happened. You know, I wanted, and he wanted video footage of it or whatever. But it was also during a cold snap, so you're outside walking to go get a cold snap. You have your agent on the phone when it all like you set, like there's so many coincidences, there's so many things that are happening, and it's like you're trying. It seems like a setup, right? There's so many red flags, but if you haven't been feeding all of these other creatures, you're going to funnel right into that, and you're going to operate out within that. You're just going to accept it. And so I think that there are people who are politicians who, for the most part, I think that they're more culturally, ideologically possessed, in the sense that they will run through these lines. When you hear on these committees or hearings, there was the FBI whistleblower hearing, and the one woman who's in the minority, she's like, this is just a ploy to make it seem as though January 6th was nothing. You know, they're trying to downplay this, and simultaneously they're trying to attack our intelligence agencies. And it's like, she may actually believe that.
Yeah,
she probably is, but she's been feeding that one.
She's been culturally sabotaged or culturally like you said, she has like a parasite or something or whatever. She's
got a monster
by the mantra.
She's fed her creature into becoming a monster, so that she can't even see that there was corruption within the FBI. And you've got the Durham report that effectively outlines it, but then you have there's other people who are politicians that are like, well, there's consequences to this kind of stuff, so I don't want to make recommendations. So it ends up being that nobody actually gets punished. Nobody, like everybody who participated in this, they basically said,
well, the FBI already has all the policies in place that are necessary. They just weren't following them. So what that says is that everyone should be fired that wasn't following.
Yeah, them. And they weren't. Yeah, there's no consequences to any of this stuff, and it's like, so what people effectively did was they just said, oh, you know what? Like, I've got bias, and I'm going to pursue this bias, and I'm gonna go purely off of confirmation bias. And I'm gonna reject everything else. Like, these are people who are operating solely with monsters in their box. They don't have any understanding of any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's I think is what's going on. That's how I can make your case for you.
That's the general kind of argument that I'm saying, is that like they're all just in this thing. They're all just convinced of whatever. They don't necessarily think they're going for war. They don't think they're doing these things. It's just that's the way it goes because of how they funnel everything. So anyway, it's right.
But I also think that the way that these people manage to get in power is because somebody else is pulling strings. They're
the George Soros.
They're creating the situation. Yeah, they're creating the situation that enables these people to get into power. Because if you can have somebody that you don't even have to control. I mean, if I could create a person and I don't even have to pay them, and they're going to go out and do
Right.
the agenda that I want them to do.
Right. Rush
Like,
Limbaugh had
I
that
mean, I'm
argument.
super happy.
Rush Limbaugh says, because people always call about different things about conspiracies and all that kind of stuff, and he said, you know what? They don't, like Obama doesn't have to tell them to do that.
Yeah,
They already know what to do.
yeah.
So like he doesn't have to
You
have
don't
any
have to have a
direct communication.
conversation.
These people are just going to do what they know to do already, and it has
Yep.
nothing to do, right? So, yeah,
Yep.
no, that's it's true.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, let's wrap it. Let's wrap it.
I think we'll wrap it up. I think that was a really fun, intense
Yes. See,
conversation debate.
Isn't it great when you can basically be right the whole time and just trying to talk me down out of my place? Hey, you know,
Yeah.
it's whatever. I don't care. I just reject that
I'm
general
very
idea.
fiery. I'm
It's
very
like, yes,
fiery, and
I
I
get
get
it.
very
It maybe it's true. It just sucks. And the same solution: get rid of all those assholes.
Hey, I
Get rid
mean,
of all of it.
I'm happy for you to hold the position that you do, because it enables me. One of the things that I kind of was thinking that would be a difficult thing, as we've talked about earlier on, is finding things that we may disagree on.
Yeah,
Because if
it's
we can find
small,
things
but
that we
yeah.
can disagree on, that's where more entertaining things, more dialogue, more interesting things are going to be able to come
And
out.
you're gonna win in most of our disagreements because you do really good.
I make a case
You
pretty well.
you look into things, and I'm more shooting from the hip. Like meaning, like you will read like whole Reddit forums and things, and
No,
like have conversations with 16 people about these different concepts,
mm,
and voice your. So like what I mean is like you are a lot more. Uh,
well versed
i-
in some of
it's not
these
it's
topics.
not a matter of, well, I mean, maybe it's well versed. You do more work intellectually. I just like I just like I'm a delivery driver that hears stuff when I'm driving around, and I'm just giving my take, and it's not completely informed all the time, and it's informal.
Yeah.
So yes, so most of the times when we have a disagreement, even if I'm right, you will probably disrespect me. So I mean that's just how it'll be.
Hey man, as long as you're okay with that, then that's fine by
Yeah.
me. All right. If you made it this far, drop a like. If you liked the conversation, hit the subscribe button. And if you are looking forward to the next one, hit that bell. We aim to get 3 a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's our current goal. So yeah, do those things. If they apply. All right. Thanks everybody. Take it easy.